Monetary Policy Committee, Thursday, February 20, 2025. The MPR was retained at 27.50%. That's the monetary policy rate, also known as benchmark interest rates. It's at 27.50%. The Monetary Policy Committee unanimously agreed to leave this rate at 27.50%. The cash reserve ratio is 50% for commercial banks and is 16% for merchant banks. That's also what we have at the end of the first meeting for the month of February 2025. Liquidity ratio stands at 30%. And of course, we have the asymmetric corridor. It stays at plus 500 and minus 100 basis points around the MPR. That's the figure from this first Monetary Policy Committee meeting for the year 2025. And this report precedes our conversation with Mr. Adetilewa Adebajo, who is already standing by. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria unanimously agreed to retain monetary policy rate at 27.5%. It also maintained the cash reserve ratio at 50%, deposit money banks at 16% for merchant banks. Uloma Oyemachi covered this, and we get straight to our conversation.
This is the first press briefing by the Central Bank Governor following a Monetary Policy Committee meeting that had been postponed twice. The Governor wasted no time announcing that the monetary policy rate will be retained at 27.50%.
The committee was unanimous in its decision to hold all parameters and thus decided as follows. Retain the MPR at 27.50%. Retain the asymmetric corridor around the MPR at plus 500 to minus 100 basis points. The committee further noted that as the federal government continues to improve security in food-producing communities, supported by other measures to enhance food supply, food prices are expected to continue to moderate.
The governor also addressed global economic challenges, citing the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, the Middle East crisis, and new tariffs imposed by the United States as factors shaping Nigeria's economic environment.
Members thus agreed unanimously to continue to monitor both domestic and global developments to identify emerging risks and propose appropriate policy responses to mitigate the impact of associated shocks to the Nigerian economy.
In response to questions about the new ATM withdrawal charges, the governor provided clarification on the policy and its expected impacts.
My view is that it isn't something that is going to dissuade people from having access in a seamless manner to their money. On the contrary, it should encourage and it should put the banks on greater scrutiny.
The next MPC meeting is scheduled for May 19th and 20th, 2025, allowing a 2-month window for ongoing economic observations. Uloma Oyemachi, TVC News, Abuja.
Now joining me live to help understand the rationale behind keeping the interest rates unchanged is Chief Executive Officer of CFG Advisory, Mr. Adetilewa Adebajo. He joins me via Zoom to continue this conversation. Good afternoon and thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I want to ask if you were also expecting the CBN's MPC to hold these rates, despite the fact that we got the figures, the rebased figures that shows the inflation dropping, and the figures dropped what we got from the NBS. But really, that didn't translate to real issues on ground like prices and all of that. But what do you make of this move by the central bank MPC to hold the rates? Was that what you were expecting, considering the realities on ground?
Yes, indeed, because you do not react immediately to a rebased figure. And the key reason why is that in economics, you have leading indicators and lagging indicators. Inflation is a lagging indicator, and it's important that you need to understand the dynamics of inflation, the cost push factors such as the increase in fuel prices and the foreign exchange devaluation were one of the key reasons why we had inflation. And we've seen stability in that sector right now. So I think it's important to look at the economy, understand the dynamics before you begin to make a move. So I think it's a step in the right direction, and let's see a wait and see attitude for the next couple of months and to confirm that indeed the trajectory of inflation is on the way down, and it will give time for the rebased numbers to adjust to the realities on ground.
But looking at some positives where the central bank governor identified yesterday, stability, a bit of stability in the foreign exchange market. We also expect the GDP figures, of course, to come in soon. He also talked about a bit of reduction in the price of PMS. Looking forward, what do you think? It looks like there's a green light, or there seems to be light as we move on before we even get to the end of the tunnel.
Definitely. I think a few issues. I think one of the key factors we're seeing with the foreign exchange stability is the new Bloomberg terminal that is bringing in transparency. On top of that, you have to take a look at the new FX code that the central bank has introduced. The FX code was signed by the chairman of the banks, the managing director of the banks, and the central bank. And, you know, there are tough sanctions within this code. And I think that the CBN has stated quite clearly that they're not going to hesitate to sanction anybody, including the banks. There are no sacred cows with this new code. And I think that itself is driving fear into the system, is driving accountability into the system, on top of the transparency and the dynamics. And of course, the Bureau de Change Operators have also been warned. They need to be very careful. You cannot begin to take a look at a transparent FX management system. You know what the rates are in those markets. And because you think you're a Bureau de Change Operator, you now add a premium on top of that to be able to service the market. It doesn't work that way. The Bureau de Change market operators, the parallel market operators, have to be part of one market, and it has to be one exchange rate mechanism. So I think this new foreign exchange code, I think, is a step in the right direction. And, you know, you do not want to fall foul of that because the sanctions are very, very severe.
The issue of food is something that the CBN governor harped on, talking about food inflation and how that can be addressed by government. Now, in your advice, what do you think really can be done practically to help bring down the price of food across the country? Of course, insecurity is one thing that everyone talks about, but what more do you think practically can be done to help address this ugly trend?
Well, it's about productivity. And I think now that we've seen stability in the price of PMS, then I think food inflation will begin to adjust accordingly, because that's another cost-push factor that impacts logistics and transportation, fuel prices. Now we've seen that stability. It wasn't like in the last 18 months when fuel prices were going up like every 3 months, and we did not really know where it was going to settle. So we've seen prices of fuel have settled between 950 Naira to 1,050 Naira. I think it's been trading in that band. And I think people are really comfortable in that area. And I think we're seeing that stability in those changes. And I think that should settle food production. Again, what is also impacting food production apart from insecurity is productivity. I think it's important now that we begin to take a look at our agricultural practices, which is smallholder. Government needs to begin to give land, especially around the river basin, to encourage large-scale farming. And I think that will go a long way to help in terms of increasing the food production in the country, because we still have a lot of hectarage, especially in the areas of Oyo State and Kwara State, that has serious hectares of land and don't have insecurity, that it's still not cultivated. You have an Ikere Gorge Dam and an Oyo Gorge Dam that both have reservoirs of close to 30,000 square kilometers in that area. We also have 3 refineries, sugar refineries in the ports owned by Dangote, Bua, and flour mills. Now, a lot of all these refineries are importing raw sugar from abroad. So these companies should now be encouraged significantly to start to backward integrate and grow the sugarcane they require to support their refineries. I mean, they should begin to find a way to stop the importation of these brown sugars, go back into large-scale agriculture to stop all these things. That is the way you boost agriculture. It needs to be deliberate. It's the same deliberate policy that President Obasanjo put in place that ended the cement importation. And now we're a net exporter of cement. So with cement now, we've done that successfully. So what is important now for us to do now is to now begin to find a way to reduce the price of cement in Nigeria. So with what we've done successfully with cement, we also need to do that in agriculture. And we need to become self-sufficient in things that we can do and where we have relative comparative advantage. And that has to do with harmonizing our policies. You know, our trade policy is very important. We need to review our HS codes. Our investment policies, we also need to review. And more importantly, our industrial policies, as I've said earlier, we need to refocus. Because in Nigeria, it is not the government that will do this. We've talked about Dangote, Otedola, Tony Elumelu, Wale Tinubu, Absamad Isiaku. We need more entrepreneurs. We also have the fintech entrepreneurs. All these entrepreneurs, where is Dangote going to spend his next $20 billion? Where is Abdul Samad going to spend his next $15 billion? Where is Tony Elumelu and Femi Otedola? How many more power plants are they going to build around the country? You are not encouraging these people to begin to expand. And these are the people that need to encourage, and even more people. I'm just using these people as examples. We need more of these people because it is the entrepreneurs that will drive business, not government. Entrepreneurs will make things happen, and we need to know where they're spending that. And to many other entrepreneurs and industries across Nigeria, that some of them, we don't even know their names, but they're contributing significantly to manufacturing. And of course, also the large multinationals. You know, we also need to encourage them in FMCG and in light manufacturing.
Interesting stuff. Now, the collaboration between the monetary and the fiscal side is also something that Mr. Cardoso mentioned yesterday, and he cited the just concluded monetary policy forum organized by the bank, saying that that handshake is better than it used to be. In your own assessment, because I know we've talked about this before now, do you think that it is better than what we used to have? Talking about the fiscal side and the monetary side working in tandem, at least for them to achieve the same goal, which is inclusive growth across the board.
Yes, the monetary side has always been working with the fiscal side. And if you go to any economy in the world, if you take a look at the monetary policy, it will tell you the state of the economy.
Yes.
When you find an economy where the interest rates are low and they're trying to achieve growth, that means that they have low inflation and they're looking to experience growth in the economy. If you take a look at any economy like Nigeria where interest rates are high, then you know that there's a problem with inflation, stagflation, and they're trying to reduce inflation to get the economy back on track. But I think we've gone beyond that in Nigeria now. The biggest problem we have now is on the fiscal side is the government deficit. Government debt is close to 150 trillion naira, and that clearly is unsustainable. The government right now has a deficit cumulative of the last 2 years, 2.5 years, cumulative deficit of 40 trillion naira that needs to be financed. $7 billion was borrowed in February. So we need to step down on debt. And if you take a look at the budget of this year, defense, infrastructure, health, education, together, combined, those three critical areas has a budget of 14 trillion. Meanwhile, our debt service is about 15.5 trillion. It's not going to get us very far. So what government needs to do on the fiscal side is to cut down debt. But on the positive side, in the international markets, the spreads on our Eurobonds are now at an all-time low. And what that means is increasing confidence in our offshore Eurobond instruments. So we need to be able to be very careful to maintain that confidence that has been given to us in the international markets. And we need to translate that confidence in getting our credit rating to move from junk bond status to investment grade. And I think that will serve us better because it will also reduce our cost of borrowing. So the key challenge the Nigerian economy faces today is debt management.
Now, almost finally, on the global scene now, which everyone is also worried about, is what's happening in the United States. And the CBN governor also spoke around that the issue of increased tariffs by the new U.S. administration and all of that. So what do you think, or what risk does this pose to us as a country with regards to our growth outlook?
Well, the countries that we export to most is India and China. They are the two countries that, India is the largest country that buys most of our oil. And the United States is low on the list at the moment. And I think the main export we have to the United States is oil. And the only thing the United States might do is to stop buying our oil. I don't think they'll slap a tariff on us. The most important thing that we have not taken advantage of is the AGOA, the African Growth Opportunities Act. Now, this was something that was started, I think, by the Clinton administration a while ago, and it was renewed by Congress. And the AGOA is due for expiration this year. So the only threat we might see in Africa is that Donald Trump might not renew AGOA, and they might scrap AGOA altogether. But having said that, Nigeria really has not taken advantage of this African Opportunities Growth Act because we've not been exporting, because that act gives certain categories of goods zero duty into America already. There's a law in America that allows African countries to export zero duty. So since we've not taken advantage of that, I don't think we're going to miss it. And if it expires later on this year, Donald Trump might just decide that he's not going to renew it. And if he doesn't renew it, if we haven't been taking advantage of it, then we can't really miss it. But outside that, I don't really think we have faced any serious threats from the US in terms of tariffs because our imports from the United States are very limited. China is our biggest importing country, where we're importing close to $20 billion a year from China. And we're exporting, our main export country now is India, which is taking most of our oil. And of course, we've stopped importing most of our petroleum products. So and I think that's helping on our trade balance. So in terms of our trade policy and international trade policy, because we've been exporting, we're going to stop importing petroleum products. We will begin to see more positive trends. And as we said earlier in your report, the oil industry actually is looking to be on the rebound because, we see some green shoots there because the rig counts in Nigeria are increasing. In the heydays, about 5 years ago, the investment in the oil industry was close to $22 billion a year. It dropped significantly over the last 2 years to about $3 billion. And at a point in time, the growth of the oil industry was -20. Last year, the oil industry recorded a 10% increase in growth. So I think with all the new deals that have been signed and with all the optimism in the new oil and gas industry and with the new management that's supposed to come into NNPC, we're still waiting for those announcements to find out who they are. So if we can get some new dynamic leadership within the NNPC hierarchy, I think that 2 million barrels becomes achievable, and we can begin to see restoration of investment in the oil industry from a low of $3 billion back to the highs of about $22 billion a year. And I am an advocate of the fact that the government should sell down a lot of its JV assets to raise about $35 to $50 billion, which it should use to pay down some of this debt and boost its reserves and boost a lot of its books, because right now the government books in terms of debts is not very healthy. And this asset sale will significantly help not only the reserves, but also reduce the debt position of government. So, a lot of interesting things on the horizon.
Amos, thank you so much for your time. Interesting conversation with you as always. Mr. Adetilowo Adebayo, Chief Executive Officer, CFG Advisory. Thank you and have a great weekend.